Good evening, wanderers of the forgotten paths. Welcome to another descent into the abyss with me, your guide through the veiled corridors of history's darkest secrets. This is The Shadow Behind You, where we unearth the tales that time itself wishes to bury. Stories of bloodlines cursed by their own ambitions, institutions that devour the souls they claim to heal, and families that vanish into the ether only to return as echoes in the night. Tonight, we turn our gaze to a place where the line between madness and reality frays like old linen sheets stained with the tears of the damned. We delve into the haunting secrets of Ravenwood Asylum, nestled in the fog-shrouded hills of Pennsylvania in the year 1903, a fortress of stone and iron where whispers are trapped within its walls, forever murmuring the unspeakable. Imagine, if you will, the world as it was at the dawn of the 20th century. America stood on the precipice of progress, with electric lights piercing the gloom of Victorian shadows, and the clamor of industry drowning out the cries of the overlooked. Yet, in the rural outskirts of Chester County, Pennsylvania, far from the bustling streets of Philadelphia, there loomed a structure that embodied the era's cruel contradictions. Ravenwood Asylum, officially the Ravenwood Institute for the Insane, rose like a monolithic sentinel amid rolling fields choked with brambles and ancient oaks, whose branches twisted like arthritic fingers toward the sky. Built in 1892 under the auspices of the state's burgeoning mental health reforms, it was designed according to the Kirkbride Plan, a blueprint for asylums that promised healing through architecture itself. Long, linear wings extended from a central administration building, allowing sunlight to flood the wards and fresh air to circulate, theoretically banishing the demons of the mind. But oh, dear listeners, theory and reality are distant cousins in the realm of human suffering. From the moment its heavy oak doors creaked open, Ravenwood became a repository for society's discarded souls, the melancholic widows driven mad by grief, the war veterans haunted by the ghosts of Gettysburg's fields, the feeble-minded children whose only crime was being born different in a world that demanded uniformity. The air within those walls carried the metallic tang of despair, mingled with the faint, acrid scent of carbolic soap used to scrub away the evidence of neglect. Patients shuffled through dimly lit hallways, their footsteps echoing like accusations, while nurses in starched white uniforms moved like specters, administering doses of laudanum that dulled the senses but never silenced the inner turmoil. What draws us here tonight is not merely the architecture or the era's misguided benevolence, but the events of 1903, a year when the whispers began. It started subtly, as such horrors often do. Orderlies reported faint murmurs emanating from the plaster walls, as if the building itself were alive and gossiping about the atrocities committed within. Patients, already teetering on the edge of sanity, claimed to hear voices calling their names, recounting secrets they had never shared. One young woman, committed for what the doctors termed hysterical delusions, scribbled in her hidden journal, "The walls breathe. They remember everything." These were not mere hallucinations, listeners. They were harbingers of a darkness that would engulf Ravenwood, trapping souls in an eternal loop of torment. Picture yourself approaching Ravenwood on a chill autumn evening in 1903. The sun dips low, casting elongated shadows that slither across the gravel path like serpents. The asylum's facade, with its Gothic arches and barred windows, looms against a bruised sky, thunder rumbling in the distance as if the heavens themselves disapprove. You pause at the wrought iron gates, etched with ravens in flight, symbols of the founder, Dr. Elias Ravenwood, a man whose name would become synonymous with forbidden knowledge. The wind carries a faint wail, not quite human, not quite wind. Do you dare step inside? For once you do, the shadows behind you may never let you leave. As we embark on this journey, I invite you to dim your lights, draw your curtains tight, and listen closely. For in the silence between my words, you might just hear them, the whispers trapped within Ravenwood's walls, beckoning you to uncover what should remain buried. What secrets did Dr. Ravenwood unearth in his quest to cure the incurable? What vanished families left their bloodlines etched into the stone? And why, even now, over a century later? Do visitors to the ruins report feeling watched, as if the asylum's gaze follows them home? Hold your breath, dear listeners, the tale unfolds, and with it, the chill that seeps into your bones. But before we plunge deeper, let me paint the scene more vividly. The year 1903 was one of uneasy transition. Theodore Roosevelt sat in the White House, championing reforms. Yet the underbelly of society festered with inequality. Immigrants flooded Ellis Island, seeking dreams that often turned to nightmares. And in Pennsylvania's coal mines, workers toiled in darkness that mirrored the mental voids of Ravenwood's inmates. The asylum stood as a microcosm of this era, a place where science clashed with superstition, where the promise of healing masked the reality of control. Dr. Ravenwood, a tall, gaunt figure with piercing eyes that seemed to dissect your very thoughts, believed he could map the human mind like a cartographer charts unknown lands. His methods, whispered among colleagues, bordered on the occult, experiments with electricity to realign neural pathways, herbal concoctions derived from ancient grimoires, and sessions where patients were encouraged to confront their inner shadows through hypnosis. One such patient, Eliza Thornton, a 22-year-old millworker's daughter from Philadelphia, arrived at Ravenwood in January 1903. Committed by her family for uncontrollable fits of weeping and visions of the dead, she became the unwitting center of the storm. Her diary, discovered years later amid the rubble, speaks of a growing unease. The doctor says my sorrow is a veil I must tear away, but each night, as the gas lamps flicker low, I hear them, whispers like silk tearing, revealing names and sins long forgotten. Eliza's story is our thread through this labyrinth, a young woman whose innocence collided with the asylum's malevolence. As the months progressed, reports trickled out, a groundskeeper vanishing into the fog-shrouded woods, his lantern found swinging from a branch, nurses awakening to find their reflections in mirrors distorted, mouths moving without sound. By summer, the whispers had grown bolder, audible even in daylight, reciting fragments of conversations from decades past. The staff dismissed them as wind through cracks, but the patients knew better. They spoke of the trapped ones, souls bound to the walls during a forgotten ritual, their voices an eternal plea for release. And then, in October 1903, the veil tore wide. A fire, or so the official records claim, ravaged the East Wing, claiming dozens of lives. But survivors whispered of no flames, only a suffocating darkness that swallowed light and sound, leaving behind charred silhouettes on the walls as if the shadows themselves had burned. Dr. Ravenwood disappeared that night, his office left in disarray, papers scattered like fallen leaves, inscribed with symbols that defied translation. This, listeners, is the hook that pulls you under. What if the whispers are not mere echoes, but the asylum's way of remembering? What if Ravenwood's walls, impregnated with the anguish of the forgotten, hold the key to a curse that spans generations? As we step into the main narrative, prepare to walk those halls with me. Feel the cold stone under your feet, the damp air clinging to your skin. The shadow behind you grows longer, and it listens now. Let us cross the threshold into Ravenwood's shadowed heart. The year is 1903, and the asylum stands as a bastion against the chaos of the mind, or so its creators believed. Founded by Dr. Elias Ravenwood, a physician whose lineage traced back to the witch trials of Salem, the institution was meant to be a sanctuary. Elias, born in 1855 to a family of New England scholars, had studied under the great alienists of Europe, returning to Pennsylvania with visions of reform. He purchased the land, a former Quaker farmstead rumored to be built atop Native American burial grounds, and erected the asylum with funds from philanthropists eager to assuage their guilt over society's ills. The central building, a towering edifice of red brick and limestone, housed the administration and Dr. Ravenwood's private quarters. Flanking it were the wings, the men's ward to the west, where burly attendants patrolled with keys jangling like chains, the women's to the east, softer in decor but no less imprisoning. Underground tunnels connected them, dim passages where supplies and secrets were ferried away from prying eyes. The ground sprawled over 200 acres, with gardens intended for therapeutic labor, though they often became overgrown tangles where patients wandered, lost in their delusions. Enter Eliza Thornton, our fragile protagonist. On a blustery January morning, she was escorted through the gates by her stern father, a man hardened by the mill's relentless grind. Eliza's affliction began after her mother's death in a factory accident the previous year. Visions of her mother's mangled form, whispers urging her to join the dead. She's touched by the devil, her father muttered to the admitting nurse, avoiding Eliza's pleading eyes. At 22, with raven hair cascading like midnight streams and eyes the color of storm clouds, Eliza was a picture of fragile beauty, her slender frame trembling in the coarse admission gown. Dr. Ravenwood himself conducted her intake, his voice a velvet baritone that masked the steel beneath. "My dear," he said, leaning forward in his leather chair, the room heavy with the scent of pipe tobacco and old books. "Here at Ravenwood, we do not chain the body, we free the mind. Tell me of these whispers you hear." Eliza hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of her gown. "They come at night, doctor. Not just mother's voice, but others, strangers, speaking of pains I cannot fathom." Ravenwood's eyes gleamed with interest, not compassion. He noted in his ledger, subject exhibits auditory hallucinations, potential for experimental therapy. Life at Ravenwood unfolded in a monotonous rhythm designed to instill order. Dawn broke with the clang of bells, rousing patients from thin mattresses stained with the sweat of nightmares. Breakfast in the communal hall, watery porridge and weak tea, eaten under the watchful gaze of orderlies like Marcus Hale, a hulking former miner with a scar bisecting his brow, his temper as volatile as the coal dust he once breathed. Patients were divided by severity. The quiet ones, in sunlit day rooms, engaging in basket, weaving or reading sanitized Bibles. The agitated, confined to isolation cells, their cries muffled by padded walls. Eliza was placed in the women's ward, room 217, a Spartan space with a single barred window overlooking the misty woods. Her roommates included Agnes, an elderly spinster committed for religious mania, who muttered prayers incessantly, her gnarled hands clutching a rosary like a lifeline, and young Lily, barely 16, labeled imbecile for her slow speech, though her eyes held a wisdom that belied the diagnosis. The air in the ward carried the mingled odors of unwashed bodies, lye soap, and the faint, underlying rot of despair. As weeks turned to months, Eliza's treatments began. Moral therapy was the cornerstone. Daily walks in the gardens, where the crunch of gravel underfoot was meant to ground wandering minds. But Dr. Ravenwood's methods veered into the experimental. He employed hydrotherapy, submerging patients in ice-cold baths until their lips turned blue, to shock the hysteria from the system. Eliza endured these sessions, her body convulsing in the tub as nurses held her down, the water's chill seeping into her bones like liquid oblivion. Breathe through it. Ravenwood would intune, his face a mask of clinical detachment. Let the cold cleanse you. Yet the whispers persisted, growing insidious. At first they were faint, like wind sighing through eaves. Eliza heard them in the walls of her room, murmuring names. Jonathan, betrayed, Fyra. She confided in Nurse Clara Beaumont, a kind-hearted woman in her 30s, widowed young and drawn to Ravenwood for solace in helping others. Clara, with her soft brown curls and gentle touch, became Eliza's anchor. "It's just the old building settling, dear," Clara whispered during night rounds, her lantern casting flickering shadows that danced like imps. But Clara, too, began to doubt, confiding in her own journal. "Last night, as I passed the east wing, I swear I heard a child's laughter. But no children are housed there." Introduce now the catalyst, Patient Zero, as the staff later dubbed him. Jeremiah Voss, a 45-year-old veteran of the Civil War, arrived in March, his mind fractured by the horrors of Antietam. Tall and emaciated, with a wild beard streaked gray and eyes that darted like trapped animals, Jeremiah claimed to be a medium, able to commune with the dead. "The ground here is restless," he rasped during his admission, gripping Dr. Ravenwood's arm with surprising strength. "Spirits walk these halls, Doctor. They've been waiting." Ravenwood, intrigued by the occult undertones, assigned Jeremiah to his personal study group, where hypnosis sessions delved into the subconscious. Under trance, Jeremiah's voice changed, adopting accents and timbres not his own. The walls remember, he intoned one evening, the room lit only by candlelight that guttered as if breathed upon. In 1793, a fever swept this land, families quarantined, left to rot. Their whispers echo still. The session ended abruptly when Jeremiah convulsed, screaming of shadows pouring from the cracks. That night, the first anomaly occurred. Orderlies found scratches on the isolation cell walls, forming words, "Release us," as if clawed by invisible hands. Tension built like storm clouds gathering. By spring, patients reported shared dreams, visions of a great hall ablaze, figures writhing in flames that consumed flesh but not souls. Eliza, in her journal, described, "I awoke sweating, the scent of smoke in my nostrils, though no fire burned." Lily wept beside me, saying she saw the same. Ravenwood dismissed it as mass suggestion, but privately he delved deeper, poring over ancient texts in his library, volumes on alchemy and spirit binding, smuggled from European collectors. Marcus Hale, the orderly, grew suspicious. A man of brute strength but hidden intellect, he had his own secrets. A sister once committed to a similar institution, lost to neglect. Sneaking into Ravenwood's office one moonless night, he discovered diagrams, pentacles inscribed with patient names, notes on harnessing ethereal energies for cerebral realignment. The doctors playing God, Marcus confided to Clara, their forbidden alliance forming in the tunnels below. As summer's heat baked the grounds, the whispers amplified. They infiltrated conversations, overlaying words with undertones of malice. A patient in the men's ward, driven mad, clawed at his ears until blood flowed, screaming, "Make them stop!" Autopsies revealed nothing anomalous, but rumors spread among staff. Ravenwood was conducting seances, inviting the dead to possess the living for therapeutic insight. Eliza, fragile yet resilient, became the focal point. During a hypnosis session in June, she spoke in a voice not her own, an elderly man's timbre, recounting a betrayal in 1820, when the farmstead's owner murdered his kin for inheritance. Buried in the foundations, the voice croaked, "Our blood mortar the stones." Ravenwood's excitement was palpable. He believed he had unlocked the asylum's latent power, a reservoir of psychic energy to cure all ills. But the cost mounted. Lily, the young girl, vanished one night, her bed empty, a trail of small footprints leading to the woods. Search parties found nothing but a doll clutched in brambles, its eyes gouged out. Clara, investigating, heard whispers calling her name, luring her deeper into the fog. "They're hungry," Jeremiah warned Eliza, his eyes feverish. "The doctors fed them tastes of our pain." By July, the asylum teetered on chaos. Patients rioted in the day room, smashing windows, their unified chant, "The walls speak truth." Orderlies quelled it with clubs, but not before blood stained the floors. Dr. Ravenwood, undeterred, prepared his magnum opus, a grand experiment to bind the whispers and harness them. Listeners, feel the humidity of that Pennsylvania summer, the air thick with impending doom. The shadows lengthen, and in part 2, the veil rends fully. What horrors await in the heart of Ravenwood? Stay with me, the whispers draw nearer. As the sweltering days of July 1903 bled into August, Ravenwood Asylum descended into a fever dream of its own making. The whispers, once subtle sighs, now roared like a chorus of the damned, infiltrating every crevice. Patients awoke with bruises in the shape of hands, as if grasped by invisible assailants in their sleep. The gardens, once therapeutic, withered inexplicably, leaves curling black as if scorched by unseen fire. Dr. Elias Ravenwood, his once impeccable attire now rumpled, his eyes ringed with shadows, pressed on with manic fervor. "We are on the cusp," he confided to his inner circle, a select few nurses and orderlies sworn to secrecy. "The whispers are the key. They hold the memories of madness, and by confronting them, we conquer it." Eliza Thornton, our beleaguered heroine, found herself at the epicenter. Her visions intensified, nightly apparitions of spectral figures, gaunt men in tattered Union uniforms, women with hollow eyes clutching phantom infants, parading through her room. They point at me, she whispered to Nurse Clara during a stolen moment in the laundry, the steam from boiling linens cloaking their words. As if I am to blame. Clara, her own nerves fraying, noticed anomalies, mirrors fogging with breath not their own, doors slamming shut on windless days. We must get you out, Clara urged, but escape from Ravenwood was a fantasy. The gates were locked, patrolled by dogs whose howls blended with the human cries. Jeremiah Voss, the medium patient, became Ravenwood's unwilling oracle. Confined to a reinforced cell after an outburst, he scrawled messages on the walls with his own blood. The binding ritual awakens the bound. Under hypnosis, he revealed fragments of the asylum's buried history. The land's curse stemming from 1750, when colonial settlers massacred a Lenape tribe, their shaman cursing the soil to trap the invaders' descendants in eternal echo. Ravenwood scoffed at superstition but incorporated it, blending science with sorcery in his experiments. He administered concoctions of belladonna and opium to open the third eye, forcing patients into trances where they communed with the whispers. One such session in the asylum's chapel, a dimly lit space with stained glass windows depicting ravens in flight, turned catastrophic. Gathered were Eliza Jeremiah Agnes and two others, a catatonic miner named Thomas and a delusional artist, Viola, who painted visions of hellscapes. Ravenwood, encircled by candles, chanted incantations from his forbidden tomes. The air grew thick, charged with ozone like before a storm. Suddenly, the whispers surged, audible to all. You summon us, now we claim you. Candles extinguished in a gust, plunging the room into darkness. Screams erupted, Thomas convulsed, foaming at the mouth. Viola clawed at her face, shrieking of insects burrowing under her skin. When light returned, courtesy of Marcus Hale bursting in with a lantern, chaos reigned. Thomas lay dead, his eyes wide in terror. Viola babbled incoherently. Eliza, trembling, recounted, "The shadows moved, Doctor. They reached out from the walls." Ravenwood, undaunted, declared it a breakthrough. "We've pierced the veil." But Marcus, witnessing the horror, confronted him later in the tunnels. "This ain't healing, Doc. It's damnation." Ravenwood's response was chilling, a sly smile, whispering, "Perhaps they are one the same." The conflicts deepened. Staff defections mounted. A nurse fled after finding her bed sheets embroidered with invisible threads spelling curses. Patients formed alliances, whispering plans of revolt in the day rooms, their voices mingling with the ethereal ones. Clara and Marcus, bound by shared revulsion, plotted to expose Ravenwood. Sneaking into his quarters, they unearthed a hidden compartment, diaries detailing experiments on disposable patients, lobotomies performed with improvised tools, electrotherapy that left burns like stigmata, and worse, rituals involving bloodletting to feed the entities. By September, the haunting events escalated. Poltergeist activity ravaged the wards, furniture levitating, crashing down, water in basins turning to blood-red sludge, apparitions manifesting in broad daylight, a child skipping through halls, vanishing into walls. Lily's ghost, or so it seemed, appeared to Eliza, beckoning her to the basement. Following, Eliza discovered a sealed room, its door splintered. Inside, skeletal remains chained to walls, relics of the 1793 fever quarantine, their bones etched with pleas. The climax brewed in October as leaves turned crimson like spilled blood. Ravenwood announced a grand convergence, a ritual to bind the whispers permanently, using Eliza as the vessel. "Your sensitivity makes you perfect," he told her, strapping her to a table in his laboratory, instruments gleaming under gaslight. Jeremiah, drugged and bound nearby, muttered warnings. "The trap will trap you all." As Ravenwood incanted, the asylum trembled. Whispers swelled to a cacophony, walls cracking as if birthing something monstrous. Chaos erupted. Patients broke free, rampaging through halls. Marcus and Clara stormed the lab, Marcus wielding a crowbar. "It's over, Doc," he bellowed. A struggle ensued. Ravenwood, possessed by frenzy, lunged with a scalpel. In the melee, candles toppled, igniting curtains. But no ordinary fire this, it spread unnaturally, shadows dancing within flames, consuming wood but sparing flesh in grotesque ways. Eliza, freed by Clara, fled into the night. The asylum ablaze behind her. Screams pierced the darkness, mingling with triumphant whispers. Free, but not forgotten. Ravenwood vanished amid the inferno, his body never found. Survivors scattered, carrying tales that officials dismissed as delirium. In the aftermath, Ravenwood stood ruined, its walls charred, whispers silenced. Or so it seemed. Eliza, haunted forever, vanished into obscurity, her journal the sole testament. But listeners, in quiet moments do you hear them? The story lingers, a shadow behind you waiting. To fully grasp the chilling essence of Ravenwood's tale, we must peel back the layers of history, blending the factual scaffolding of early 20th century American asylums with the folklore that shrouds them in eternal mystery. Pennsylvania, with its rich tapestry of colonial strife, industrial grit, and Quaker humanitarianism, served as fertile ground for institutions like Ravenwood. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the state led the nation in mental health reforms, yet these efforts often masked deeper societal traumas. The Kirkbride Plan, devised by Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride in the 1840s, influenced Ravenwood's design. This architectural philosophy advocated for sprawling, bat-wing layouts to maximize light, air, and nature's healing touch, a far cry from the dank dungeons of earlier madhouses. Pennsylvania's Harrisburg State Hospital, opened in 1851, exemplified this, initially housing patients in human conditions before overcrowding turned it into a warehouse of woe. Similarly, the Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane, established in the 1840s, transferred patients to rural settings for moral treatment, emphasizing routine kindness and occupation over restraint. Yet, by 1903, the idealism faded, the eugenics movement, gaining traction, viewed the feeble-minded as threats to societal purity, leading to institutions like Pennhurst State School and Hospital, opened in 1908 near Spring City, Pennsylvania. Intended for the intellectually disabled, Pennhurst quickly became overcrowded, with over 3,000 residents by the 1930s in facilities designed for 500. Treatments devolved into abuse, forced labor, sterilization, and experimental procedures rooted in pseudoscience. A 1968 expose revealed horrors, patients naked, beaten, and neglected, echoing Ravenwood's fictional descent. Cultural context intertwines with folklore. Pennsylvania's history of Native American displacements, the Lenape tribes forced from lands like Chester counties, fueled legends of cursed grounds. Asylums built atop such sites absorbed these tales, with whispers attributed to restless spirits. The 1793 yellow fever epidemic in Philadelphia, killing thousands, left quarantine horror stories that mirrored Ravenwood's buried secrets. Treatments in 1900s asylums were barbaric by modern standards. Hydrotherapy involved prolonged immersion in cold water to calm nerves, often causing pneumonia. Insulin shock therapy, emerging in the 1930s but foreshadowed by earlier experiments, induced comas to reset the brain. Electroconvulsive therapy scorched minds, while lobotomies severed frontal lobes, leaving patients docile shells. Moral treatments decline amid immigration waves and urbanization led to overcrowding. Byberry in Philadelphia, renamed a state hospital in 1938, housed thousands in squalor. Folklore amplifies the eerie Pennhurst's ghosts. Apparitions of abused children, screams in empty halls, stem from real deaths and neglect. Legends of shadow people and poltergeists blend with historical trauma, creating an unsettling authenticity. Quaker influences promoted compassion, but industrial Pennsylvania's harsh realities. Coal mine disasters, mill accidents, filled asylums with the broken, their stories vanishing into institutional silence. This blend of fact and myth underscores Ravenwood's narrative, a microcosm of cultural fears, where progress masked cruelty, and the past's whispers refused to fade. Beneath the surface of Ravenwood's haunting lies a labyrinth of symbolic and psychological depths, connecting to universal fears that transcend time. The asylum, as a metaphor, embodies society's attempt to quarantine the other, the mad, the different, the traumatized, reflecting humanity's dread of the uncontrollable self. In 1903, amid America's Gilded Age facade, Ravenwood symbolizes the fracture between enlightenment and barbarism, where scientific hubris invites supernatural retribution. Psychologically, the whispers represent repressed trauma. Freud's emerging theories of the unconscious mirror the walls as the ed, trapping forbidden memories that erupt in hysteria. Elisa's visions evoke Jungian shadows, the unacknowledged aspects of psyche that, when ignored, manifest as hauntings. The asylum's descent critiques institutionalization's dehumanization, where patients become experiments, echoing real abuses at Penhurst. Thematically, it taps cultural trauma. Pennsylvania's history of displacement and epidemic mirrors global fears of erasure. The curse from native lands symbolizes colonial guilt, whispers as voices of the silenced demanding reckoning. Universal fears of madness, losing one's mind in a rational world, are amplified. Ravenwood questions sanity's fragility, blurring lines between ghost and delusion. Human nature's dark side shines through Dr. Ravenwood. Ambition as a curse, his experiments a Faustian bargain. The vanishing families theme explores inheritance, cursed bloodlines perpetuating suffering, akin to eugenics' flawed logic. Ominously, this connects to modern echoes. Deinstitutionalization left ghosts in abandoned asylums, now haunted attractions that commodify pain. Ravenwood warns of forgetting history, lest whispers return louder. As our journey through Ravenwood's shadowed halls draws to a close, the chill lingers, doesn't it? We've traversed the asylum's birth in hope, its descent into horror, and the echoes that persist. The events of 1903, the fire that wasn't, the whispers that bound souls, left scars on Pennsylvania's landscape, ruins where wind still carries faint murmurs. What became of the survivors? Eliza Thornton faded into legend, perhaps starting a new life, forever haunted. Dr. Ravenwood. Some say his spirit wanders the grounds, seeking to complete his ritual. Today, sites like Penhurst stand as testaments, their ghosts a reminder of forgotten cruelties. Yet, the true horror is this: are the whispers trapped, or are we? In quiet moments, listen. Do you hear them? The shadow behind you stirs, dear listeners. Until next time, remember, some secrets refuse to stay buried.